Since I was a kid, I always enjoyed radios. I made radios with Radio Shack kits, I had police scanners, and I still have a ton of radios in my collection today. In fact, my uncle really got me into radios when he showed up one Christmas with a Sony ICF Pro 80. It was amazing. You could pick up police frequencies, AM, FM, and airplanes at the same time. My mind was blown. In fact, this radio was so memorable for me, I had to pick one up on Craigslist when one showed up locally a couple years ago. My interest in radio eventually led me to get my technician license in 2004 and my general in 2008, and I've owned over a dozen ham radios since then. So, where am I going with all this? Well, over the 5 years, my interest in ham radio and radio in general has really gone downhill. There's more police channels that are becoming encrypted. The radios aren't as exciting anymore, and I just don't have that passion I used to. In fact, I sold my last HF rig, an ICOM 7100, a month or so ago to buy some new video lights. Today I ramble on about why I've lost interest in ham radio and why I think the hobby might be in trouble in general. I want to start with a few motivators that got me into ham radio to begin with. One of the big things for me was a little bit of extra added safety in the backcountry when I was either hiking by myself or riding my dual sport motorbike. Having a dual band handheld and a repeater book in your tank bag could really save you in a pickle. In fact, 2004 was great timing for my radio license because in 2005 I took a 5,000 plus mile motorcycle trip from Seattle up to Alaska and back, and it was amazing. Back in those days, PLBs were very expensive, they were heavy, and they weren't widely used in the backcountry. This all changed in 2008 when the first Spot tracker became available. It was affordable, easy to use, and it had an SOS button to hit if you got into trouble. Then came along the DeLorme InReach. This was a two-way satellite messenger that also had an SOS button, but you could tie it to your cell phone, send text messages back and forth to your family, and I've been using one since 2012. So back when I got my license in 2004, the radios still felt cool. They were small, the batteries had good life, and they functioned pretty well. Now, fast forward 15 years. When I think high-tech radios, I think Yaesu, DR2, the DR400, and the ICOM 7100. The problem is the touchscreens on these are more similar to a Palm Treo 600 from 2004 than they are a modern cell phone. The menus don't really make a lot of sense, and it feels like a half-assed attempt to make these modern. What about Bluetooth? Well, to get Bluetooth, you tend to have to buy external modules or other things that makes this whole thing complicated. You can go on Amazon and buy a $50 Android phone that has Bluetooth, but a $600 radio, they can't put Bluetooth built in without taking the damn thing apart and putting a card in it. It just makes no sense to me. But you can get built-in APRS. Woo! This technology is so simple, I feel like it should have been put in radios over a decade ago. So some of you are probably asking why I haven't mentioned the Kenwood TH-D774A. This is because I haven't used one and I really can't comment on it. But I would ask, if this was such a game changer, why haven't any of the other manufacturers made a radio similar to this in the last 3 years since it was released? Is it too modern for the ham radio crowd? Is it too expensive? I don't know. Another funny thing is, even though this radio was released 3 years ago, Kenwood's website still shows it as new. Considering it's 15 years since I got my ham license, the technology really hasn't changed. One of the first radios that I purchased was a Yaesu VX6R, a radio I still have today. The amazing thing about this radio is it's still sold and listed on Yaesu's website. Can you imagine any other technology that 15 years later would still be selling this modern gadget? No, nobody. Sure, it was a good rig, but it wasn't legendary. In fact, the year that the VX6R was released, so was the Motorola Pebble and the Nokia 6230. What about some of these Chinese manufacturers? Well, I think they're actually making it worse. You have companies like Yaesu that are releasing Chinese radios with their brand name on it to try and compete with these Baofengs and lower end radios instead of deciding to innovate and make things cool. And another interesting thing is that some of the Chinese manufacturers are starting to make features on radios that you can't get with the ICOM, Kenwoods, and Yaesus. If you're a volunteer first responder, you want a Part 90 radio that can do commercial frequencies as well as ham frequencies that you might use back and forth sometime. The Japanese manufacturers don't want to compete with themselves because they have commercial and ham lines, but the Chinese manufacturers can offer 2 radios in one that work well at an affordable price. So we're living in an era where you can buy a 4K camera for under $2,000 like this one that you could shoot a featured documentary on. You can buy a digital audio workstation software for your computer that can simulate thousands of instruments and truly record a studio album. I have a watch that can track my activity, including heart rate, distance walked, elevation gained, storm prediction through barometric pressure, all while integrating with my smartphone. And what do we have on ham radio? Well, basically the same tools we had 15 years ago. People say the hobby's growing, but is it? We're living in an era where there's no code tests and $30 radios. How many of these people are really gonna stick around? Trust me, I love radios and always will. But with technology moving around us so fast and offering better solutions to problems that ham radios used to solve, I'm just not that interested anymore. I'm the first one to say I don't want to see this hobby die, but in order for it to stick around, we got to continue to push the technology, the radios, and the technologies that we're using within the bands. But right now, I don't feel like ham radio is high tech anymore, and it just doesn't have the appeal that it used to, and that makes me sad. Please leave your comments below on things that you're doing to keep the hobby fresh. Also, I'd like to know what type of technologies you're doing to continue to push the envelope to make this hobby relevant. Thanks for watching.